All right, thanks for everybody's patience this morning, and thanks for getting up so early, especially on day 2. That's never easy. As I mentioned, as you just walked in the room, if you'd like to hit the QR code, we can get you some PGRL, PGA continuing education credits for any sessions you're at today. There's a different QR for each session, so just make sure you hit those as you come in and out today. Originally from England, Mark Blackburn came to America on a college golf scholarship. He became the team captain at the University of Southern Mississippi, where he received a degree in coaching. After college, he played professionally, and during that time, inconsistencies and injury led to questioning golf's teaching theories and ideas. The answers transitioned to do a teaching taxonomy, which allows him to apply a holistic sports science approach that he continues to hone. Mark works with golfers of all levels as Director of Instruction of the Blackburn Golf Academy at Greystone Golf and Country Club in Birmingham. Mark is also the 2020 PGA of America's National Teacher of the Year, and in the current Golf Digest survey of golf instructors, they rank him as the #1 coach in America on their top 50 best teachers. He's coached dozens of PGA Tour professionals, and just got in at 3 a.m. this morning from the West Coast, taking care of those boys. And he's on a plane just about every week, so we really appreciate him getting up early after a long night to help us out this morning and talk about his new best-selling book, The Coaching Code. So ladies and gentlemen, Mark Blackburn.
How's everyone? Is this on?
Should be good. I'll adjust in the back.
Okay. Oh, perfect. How's everyone doing this morning?
Good.
Good.
First day of the show, good, bad, average? Same as it always is. Everyone got hangovers? I'm on dry January, so that's about the only good thing I've got going for me at the moment. Okay, so Lauren asked me if I'd like to come chat a little bit about the coaching code, and I guess we should have a little bit of a backstory as to kind of how it happened, and then what all entails. But I would say I spend most of my time now traveling all over the world, trains, planes, and automobiles. I would say that in my sort of time on the PGA Tour and coaching regular golfers, there's lots of learning that obviously goes on, and I think that the way the world is now, we've got lots of information, and we're probably on information overload, and we can measure, analyze absolutely everything, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have the ability to apply all that information. So there's obviously the humanistic side of coaching, which is really, really important. It's a human interaction. I have a team of coaches at Greystone in Birmingham. We have 6 coaches, guys and girls, and we teach everybody from complete beginners all the way through to some of the people that you may well know famously as professional golfers. And so each of those golfers have their own challenges, but I think that offers an opportunity to refine and work on your craft as a teacher and a coach. And I think one of my sort of closest friends in terms of in the golf industry is Matt Rudy, who was my writer at Golf Digest for a long, long time. And obviously I have a funny accent, and I live in Alabama, which is unusual for an English guy. But Matt's always like, well, your kind of take on things is a little bit different. I think maybe you should write a book. And I was like, I'll write a book. And he goes, well, I think you should write a book about the coaching side of things and how you see things, because I think people would take a lot of information from that could help them in their journey as teachers and coaches. So the goal of the book is more of a, if you like, to try and put a stick in the sand a little bit about coaching. And, you know, there's allegedly something about if you're an author, I'm not sure whether that's true or not, but the book's self-published. It's done way better than I thought it was going to do, and I haven't really done a book launch, so it's quite interesting. But the book is more about the tenets, which we'll talk about, in my mind, of coaching. And there's lots of different ones, but I tried to simplify it to where there were things that I thought would be really applicable, that everybody could take a piece of, and then you could scale it relative to the golfer. So I think all of these are applicable, whether you're teaching Mrs. Haverkamp or whether you're teaching Justin Rose. It really doesn't matter. You're going to use some of these attributes. And all of the things, skills, you know, if you like, technology, analytics that's at our disposal now, and all of the tools that we have, is how do you utilize and how do you put those in, and how do you package them up in a humanistic way, if you like, in the interaction. And my observation is the best coaches are able to get things out of people that they didn't think they were able to do. And so we'll go through, I'm basically going to talk about each chapter. I'm not really going to divulge any of the cool stuff that's in the book so much as I'm going to give you the cliff notes, and we'll go through the sort of 12 slides and just chat a little bit about the overview, and then hopefully that encourages you all to potentially go to Amazon or my website and buy the book. But I'm told it's quite good, so I might be a little biased. So kind of, what does inside the coaching code look like? Well, I think the important part to understand is there's a big difference between teaching and coaching. So I think great coaches are teachers, but not all teachers are great coaches. And I think that's the important part. I have lots of peers on the PGA Tour who, in my opinion, are much better teachers than me, but they're not necessarily great coaches. Coaching is getting somebody to do something they didn't think they were going to be able to do. You can be a very good coach and not the most competent teacher. But it's hard to be a great teacher and a great coach. And I think coaching is what we're missing in our industry in terms of the PGA of America was started in New York by a bunch of former players. Then they figured out, okay, we need to help people play the game. I call that kind of coaching. We've got, I think, into a scenario where we've spent a lot of time analyzing, and we get people to try and do things correctly, as opposed to let's be functional, let's get them playing the game, let's get the golf ball in the hole. There's no pictures on the scorecard. The person with the lowest score wins. And that is 100% the mindset I have when I'm coaching the best players in the world, and when we coach our juniors at home and all of our club golfers. I've got too many players that get tied up in thinking they have to do it properly versus figuring out what's functional for them to allow them to score. Their ego gets in the way, and that takes coaching to then break that down and get in their face. Lots of people want to be friends with PGA Tour players. I have absolutely zero desire to be a friend with a PGA Tour player, because I need to have their respect, so I want to be able to push their buttons and tell them what to do. My job is not to be liked. My job is to be respected. So then you have to push people how they don't want to be pushed. I always use the analogy, I'm an Auburn fan, which is a debacle at the moment, but Nick Saban is obviously down the street. Spend some time with Saban. He has no desire to be friends with anybody he coaches, the players, right? But they have his utmost respect, and he's probably the goat of it. So I think the important part is you have to have that professional boundary to push people to do things. And that's what coaching is, and to me, that's what I'm passionate about. I think we spend a lot of time analysing. I don't think we spend enough time coaching, getting people to do things, and I think that's where we're missing. That's the part of the death of that stupid thing that's sitting down there that goes off all the time. Social media, interaction with people, eye contact, all those things have gone. So, the coaching code looks a little bit like working with players, getting people to, from where they are right now, and trying to carry them all the way to what their goals, dreams, and aspirations are. And they're all very dependent on the skill level of the player. If it's a junior golfer, it could be them making, their high school team. It could be them actually shooting under 100 for the first time. For a club golfer, it could be that they want to play in the club championship. They've never played in it, they want to be able to qualify for it, and they want to play in it. For a college golfer, it could be, okay, they're really struggling, they want to play better to win a tournament. Maybe they're at the higher end of college and they're trying to aspire to play the PGA Tour and they want to improve their ranking on the PGA Tour U. Or if it's a tour player, they're struggling or they're coming back from injury. There's two times you basically have intervention with a tour player: when they're really struggling and they suck, or if they're coming back from an injury and they don't want to get injured again. Otherwise, the changing coaches with the PGA Tour player tends not to be the most, it doesn't happen that often. There's certain players who change coaches all the time, they tend to be the ones that are struggling. But if you look at long-term relationships, so Scotty Scheffler and my friend Randy Smith, they've been together for a long, long time, pretty good success. So change isn't always a good thing, sometimes it is, but it looks like helping players get better regardless of their skill level. What are the tools and skills that I need to utilize to essentially be able to help players of all different levels? And I look at everybody as a bit of I'm a critical thinker. Everyone's seen the show House, right? Crazy English guy, Hugh Laurie's American accent's incredible. However, he's always the guy that's problem solving, and that's how I look at every golfer. Every golfer, I really enjoy the critical thinking side of the sort of problem. Like, what am I going to do with this person? This is their goals. And every bay that we have in our academy has basically an 8x4 whiteboard. And that whiteboard starts with the player who comes in. First thing we do with everybody is, obviously their name goes up there, we do a movement screen, so we kind of have that on one side. And then we have what's the shot they want to hit, shape, trajectory. We start with their outcome, what's their desired goal, and then we work everything back from that. And so I start with the end in mind and then work everything back towards what the goal is. And I think that's really, really important. And the cool thing now, as we'll talk about, is there are lots of resources, lots of great information out there that can help you be a better coach. My buddy John Dunnigan's in the back of the room. He has got a great program, Skilled Coaching Alliance with my buddy Dr. Will Wu. I encourage all of you to use that. It's a great tool to help you. It's one of the things, motor learning, that's vitally important in actually helping these players take the information and get them better. One of the tools in the toolbox. But the tools are all out there. Our job is to be a bit like a head coach in a football team, is to try and coordinate all these different mechanisms to help the player get better. And I think when you're a really good coach, you're willing to go anywhere to look at anything to try and figure out, does that problem solve for that person? And if you have a critical thinking brain like yours truly, that's how I see it. I'll be somewhere and all of a sudden I'll think of a player, and I would say, in all transparency, most of the time it's probably one of the 10 tour players I coach, because the majority of my income now comes from those guys because they're playing for a stupid amount of money. So, but I'm always, I could use that with this player, because every player is their own unique sort of, if you like, problem solving exercise. So, if you look at coaching, what does coaching really involve? What is it? I think there's so many different characteristics that go in it. I don't think there's one thing, but when I think of a coach, I think of someone who's very empathetic, who has the ability to relate to the player, has empathy, puts themselves in the player's shoes. I think if you've come from a playing background, it's really useful because you realise how hard golf is, and so you understand, okay, this isn't as easy as you would think. How is this player, why is this player potentially struggling? So you can kind of filter things. I think you have to be very proficient at controlling the variables. I think you need to try and mitigate a lot of noise that's not necessary. I think you need to let people focus on a few things. You need the primary issue, what's causing them their problems, and then what do they need to do to address that, and how are they going to go about it? Like, people want to plan. Always say it's a bit like a movie. Every movie has a hero, has somebody who guides the hero, has a villain. And the reality is, when you're coaching a golfer, the golfer's a bit like Luke Skywalker, if you're a Star Wars fan, and the coach is a little bit like Obi-Wan Kenobi. And your job is trying to prepare them and empower them that they have the tools, they have the resources, and they can be really, really successful. And even the best players in the world, we'll talk a little bit about this, they're very insecure. A lot of players, they seem resilient, robust, really confident in the things they do, but they're all, they go from suicidal to bulletproof in 24 hours, I can assure you. Interesting creatures. But, your job as a coach is to reassure them, to make them think that they can handle things, to allow them to play well. People want to have a calm around them. They want to be told that they can do something, and that's coaching. Telling someone what to do in a lesson, this is technically what you need to do, and then sending them off, that is teaching. That's great, but that is not coaching. That isn't necessarily what gets people to do things that they didn't think they could do. And we all know great coaches, and I think coaching is what is essential to get people to really do what they need to do. So, obviously had a few successes. The one thing I would say on the PGA Tour is that the players I've coached are all very, very different. I don't have a method. I didn't really pay that much attention to it in college, but I was a coaching exercise science major. Once I met Greg Rose in the early 2000s, that kind of created a pretty interesting sort of roadmap for me, because I was a Golf Machine, Morad, Mac O'Grady guy. I threw that in with a sort of body, and then all of a sudden I was like, there's lots of different ways to coach players technically. And I would say in my infancy, I was way more of a teacher than a coach. I was always very, very driven to find solutions, but I think my ability and notoriety and success really took off when I became much more of a coach, not necessarily consciously, but just because all of a sudden I was taking these things and I thought, well, technically I know what I'm doing, but what am I missing? And I would say I went to way less as a coach, figure out exactly what it is, let the player own that. Once they've accomplished that, then move on to the next thing. And I think the biggest thing that's helped a lot of us, if you look at the tip of the spear in coaching, is analytics, because now there's a massive objectivity to which we never had before. So before, golf coaching was a lot, if you like, there were gurus. You had Led, you had Butch, you had Chuck Cook, you had Jim McLean, you had all these gurus who were great, and if you couldn't do it, it was invariably because it was you, it wasn't necessarily their information. And if you look at, if you actually take a big step back and look, they all had amazing success because they're great teachers and coaches if the player could do what they wanted them to do physically, or they matched their model. But there were just as many players who struggled. And I think the way that the analytics technology is now, it's a lot more objective as to whether you're helping a player or not. And I think that makes us all a lot more honest, and it makes us a lot better at what we do, because if you aren't accountable, or when you are accountable now, you're going to get fired. And we've all been fired. I get fired a lot. You get rehired. I've got a pretty good tenure, but obviously this year was pretty interesting. First time I've ever been on a Ryder Cup where I only had one team. The rest of them I've been where I've had to split between two, which is miserable, because you have to be very Switzerland in the middle. But this year was pretty good. Unfortunately, the wrong team for most of you in this room won, but it was great to be immersed in Team Europe, which is pretty interesting. And I've got lots of reason why they win and their cultural differences, but that was a good experience. But had a lot of success last year, a few wins. So that's, to me, proof in the pudding that coaching is successful. If you have a good job, do a good job, people win. One of the people that is on that list who got a win after 3 weeks of working with me, I no longer work with, Russell Henley. He's great. But there's lots of learning in that, and Russell didn't want to do some things that I thought would help him get better, even better. And I suggested that he do his own thing, go on, and obviously because his primary goal was to make a Ryder Cup. So it's always interesting. We'll talk a little bit about that. I call that learning while losing. That's one of the top tenets in the book. So from 2000 to 2025, I would say that's my sort of interaction with tour players. I started coaching, teaching in the late 2000s, but essentially this is my tenure from the PGA Tour, so 25 years now. There's lots of people who've coached way more, but I would say what's interesting in my sort of evolution is I went from rural Alabama, teaching on a ski slope driving range, lived in a cart barn, to somehow coaching the best players in the world and allegedly being voted the #1 coach in America by my peers, which is kind of cool. So how did I do that? Well, I would say these tenets are all things that I did, which I think are helpful to other people. The beautiful thing about coaching, in my mind, is there are different styles. So Signetti just won the national championship with Indiana. His style is probably very different to Mario Cristobal's, which is going to be different to Sean Payton in the NFL, but they're all successful. So each of us, I empower everyone. You've got to develop your own coaching style. These are just suggestions of things that could help you be more successful at that. Because guess what? I've screwed way more stuff up than you guys probably ever have. And it's much easier to kind of share. I feel like that's part of the things that coaches do. You have a coaching tree. You're trying to help people not make the same errors so that people can play the game better. So that's kind of where we got that from. So I always say it's a bit of a look behind the curtain. And Matt Rudy was like, you need to let people kind of have a look behind the curtain. And then, not bashing Hank, but I did not want a Hank Haney book. I could write an incredible book which would probably sell way more of all the stupid shit that tour players do and the stories. But it's not really going to help my reputation, because I feel like everything that you see and hear as a coach is kind of privilege, and there's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on. Some of it you would not believe. Comical, but I wanted to write a look behind the curtain that would kind of show you that they're normal creatures, just like the golfers we teach, and that there's no like superpower, nothing amazing that as a coach someone else can't learn, can't master, and it won't be able to utilize with the golfers they're with, or potentially with tour players. The one thing I would say is you either enjoy the stress and adrenaline that comes with a tour player getting very frustrated with you in the heat of the moment, or you don't. So that's why I think some people thrive coaching tour players. It's a bit of the fighter pilot mentality, and some people struggle. It's not for everybody, but I think a lot of the lessons you can learn from that really are helpful with other golfers. So this is a kind of a little look behind the curtain. So the tenets, kind of what are they? So we're going to talk about all of them, but there's kind of 12. I wanted to go with 18, and this is a really interesting fact. Matt said people don't read big books anymore. So he goes, it's a complete waste of your time making a book that's more than about 150 pages just because people won't read it. I was like, really? I said, it doesn't seem like a book. It seemed more like a magazine if it's only 150 pages. He goes, I promise you, you want it to be a small book. People will not read something that's really long. So that's kind of why we started at 12. So it's only 12 holes, not 18. I wanted it to be 18. So I think the important part here is everything that we do now. So data drives decisions. What does that really mean? Everything that I do, I'm going to measure. So, a lot of people say, don't guess, measure. I'm going to try and take, a golfer comes to me, regardless of the skill level, I'm going to try and take a lot of information in, uptake it all, and then I'm going to try and figure out, okay, what's the best decision for this person, build a decision tree. And this is, the student has no idea of this, but this is what I'm trying to do so that I can make a decision that isn't going to be regretted down the road. So I'm quite, I would say, specific on that. So if someone's coming to see me, I generally ask them to send me, if they've got a gym report, I ask them to send me any stats they have. Lots of people, most people that come to see us, I would say, our academy that aren't our members are full-on golf perverts who we love. So they've got all types of stats, most of them. And so that's really interesting to get a snapshot of that. Most people aren't really aware of what they do. They think they know, and I would say we spend quite a lot of time reframing about their perception of what they're actually doing. Their idea of why their game is struggling or where they're struggling is generally not where the issue is. And if it's a club golfer or an amateur golfer, most of the time, unless they're elite, I see them as having horrific short games. So that's one of the sort of commonalities that I see. So once we've decided, okay, here's what their game looks like, snapshot, then we look at them movement-wise, we kind of see how they move. Most people tell you all the right things, but when you screen them, the best part is like going to the doctor. It's a big BS detector, so you have a good idea about what they can actually do. Once we have that, now it's, okay, what's the outcome they want? Or what does all the data say is the best strategy for them? What's the best option for them? And that's actually the fun part from a teaching perspective, because you're going to build a pattern for them based on what they can physically do. And that's why I would say one of my sort of things I'd hang my hat on at the tour level is that none of the players I coach swing the same, that their stats are all pretty good and they get better. Because I don't have one method, I like to think that I'll teach different patterns to lots of people. I find that really enjoyable. I think that goes back to sort of the golf machine sort of background that I started with. But once we've got the best decision for that person, then it's about building a plan for them. How are you going to go about accomplishing that? I generally put it up on a board. I try and make it very simple, as in, okay, here's something that you're going to do in your setup, your backswing, your downswing, and your delivery. I'm going to talk about those, and then I'll kind of tell them this is what you need to do. Most of the time, it's not sexy, but people have terrible setups, and their backswings suck. Once you kind of create the backswing and the setup that's going to lead to the outcome they want, they have a chance. Everybody develops their pattern around how they move. You're unloading what you load up. It's the same with a tour player. So a tour player has something they don't like in the downswing. Invariably, it's a consequence of something else that's happened. Same with a club golfer. So I would argue that most people, their concept is off. They don't really understand what they need to do to get the outcome. They've read magazines that all of us have probably written a great article in, which is fantastic. But just like if you went to a pharmacy and you took the wrong drug, it might kill you, or it might heal you. It's the same with golf tips. So the reality is, you make it very simple, very pragmatic, and you go, here's what you need to do, and this is how you're going to go about it. And then once you've made that decision, then it's you're doubling down on, okay, this is what you need to do, and this is how you're going to go about it. And I found that when I start to explore and look at other coaches across all sports, the best of the best, Simplicity is on the other side of complexity, and they are really good at dumbing it down to the small things that somebody needs to do, because somebody can then onboard that, and that is easy for them to accomplish. If you give them too much, you might sound great, but you're overwhelming them, and now they don't have a plan. And the goal is, over time, the plan evolves. But they've accomplished this, now they get the right to work on this. So data is allowing me to make the decisions to be able to accomplish that. When a player comes to me, if someone asks me, I'd like you to work with you, the first thing I do is pull out my phone. This is to PGA Tour, I look at the stats. If their deficits aren't in my wheelhouse, and I'll be the first to tell you, I am not a putting coach. I teach a few people putting, but if I want to teach or get someone to putt better, it ain't going to be me. I'm going to send them to someone I think is an expert. So if I look at their stats, and they're like terrible at putting, they're negative, way down on the list, strokes gained in putting, but they're pretty good at the rest of the stuff, I'm going to tell them, well, yeah, I probably can't help you, but here's some names that you should go see to help you. So it's knowing what you're good at to be able to do that. That's a decision. So sometimes you have to be like, well, that's not the right person for me, because their deficits don't match my strengths. And that's really important. That's where the data helps you. So data drives the decision that allows us to be able to help players. Now, calm in the chaos. I think that our job as a coach is to provide the calm. So Ryder Cup is probably the most stressed that I see players. Tour events, majors, yeah, they're stressed. Even the last round before a major, they can be stressed. But the Ryder Cup is the most unique creature, having coached players on both sides of the Atlantic for this. And I think your job as a coach is to basically guide the person through the situation. And so you always see TV commentators, pundits, no names mentioned, that think people are reliant on teachers or they shouldn't have a teacher. Now, most of these people that make these comments, we didn't ever play worth a hoot anyway, but most of these players want you behind them because they want reassurance. They want a calm. They need a safety blanket when stuff's going sideways. They need normality. So when you're warming up for the Ryder Cup and you're starting to hit with the heel, and yesterday was great, and this is the warm-up, and it's getting really uncomfortable, you need to be the calm in that scenario. You got this, here's what we're going to do. You're leading them, you're guiding them. That's when the real coaching happens. That's your opportunity to shine, but you have to be ready. You can't not be paying attention. So a lot of times in those scenarios, your ability to provide the calm comes from your observing, but you're not saying very much. And we'll talk about what you don't say is important later, but the reality is, calm in the chaos is that you are able to thrive and shine when stuff goes sideways, and the player is able to lean on you and get information that calms them down, that gives them an outcome that allows them to all of a sudden free up a little bit and be able to perform, because it's guaranteed that they're going to get stressful. They're usually the way a week works at a tour event. Monday is quite jovial, Tuesday's pretty good, Wednesday's the pro-am. Now we start to get some anxiety. If they're experienced and they're pretty good, they don't really react to it. If they're a nervous wreck, Wednesday afternoons are late night cramming sessions, they're a disaster. I used to leave tour events on Wednesdays. That was a mistake. So now I don't leave till Thursdays or Fridays generally, because the first round can go from perfect warm up in the gym, it's all really good, to a disaster. And that's when all of a sudden, okay, the spotlight's on me. The caddy generally is not going to say a whole lot. Your job is to then calm the player down, reassure them this is what you need to do. You are the calm. You are their North Star, if you like, their ability, because they can lean on you. You can do this, it's fine. Now, plenty of times, I got to get in someone's face, I got to get in their eyes, some of them need a hug, some of them need to be sweared at. It just depends on who they are, right? But calm in the chaos is about you as the coach being able to provide the calm. And the best players, the really good stoic players, have a calm that's unbelievable, but they still need reassurance. Matt Fitz is one of the most stoic people I've ever seen. He's incredible, doesn't change, he's brilliant day to day. But the Ryder Cup before this year, his Ryder Cup record hasn't been great. I saw quite a bit of a change in Matt, coming into the Ryder Cup week, and all of a sudden reassuring him, look, you're doing all these great things, it's great, it's good. A lot of reassurance, like, you do with your kid, but he had the best Ryder Cup he's had, and he arguably was one of the best players on in Europe. So it's showing people that they can do it. It's quite tiring, but that's the job of coaching. That's where coaching is different. You're trying to figure out what does it take to help this person, and that's where being the calm is really important. And there's lots of skills that go into that. Your job is to reassure them. So I think that's a very undervalued trait. I think it's really, really important to be able to do that. So check your work. Now, I'd say I am notoriously a tech nerd. My wife finally got a swimming pool last year. She's delighted because most of the money that I earn goes towards tech to try and figure things out. So checking my work is something I'm really, really sort of religious about. Take a lot of notes. I bought all the different technologies, TrackMan, Foresight, buy them all. So I've basically got a way to, they all measure something quite well. I want to be able to figure out what's the best for somebody. So they all have their advantages, but checking your work basically means, is the plan that we are creating essentially leading to the outcome that we want? And you got to check it. Okay, I'm struggling with my approach play bucket. Let's say statistically it's 150 to 200 yards. Why is that? Okay, well, you've got this tendency. So we can measure, we can see what it is, the analysis part of it. Now we have to develop a plan. Okay, does the plan work? How do we check that? So I mandate basically every 2 months we do quarterly 3D force play data captures on all my players. The only caveat to that, if someone's playing really, really well and they're close to Birmingham or they're close to Oceanside in California, I'll make them go do a capture so we have it, so they have a frame of reference for themselves. The player that I've probably had the most success doing, that's Charlie Hoffman, who's got more 3D data than anybody that TPI's ever captured, because he lives in San Diego. So anytime he's played well over the years, he's had the capture taken, Greg's got him in and captured, and he's also done quarterly captures. When he's struggled and when he's off, we had an issue sort of 18 months ago where there was something that didn't seem quite right. He was doing the right things, and he has a very unique grip. He's got quite a weak right hand, but his left hand kind of strong, but it kind of looks weird. He's got massive hands, so he's tough to see. So I asked Greg, I said, can we look at his grip orientation back when Charlie was really good? Charlie got a couple of windows, but 2017 was a period when he was a very, very good player. It was that time when he would always get in the hunt in majors. I didn't quite close the door, but he was always in contention. So we went back and looked, and his grip was about 32 degrees off of where it had been when he was at his heyday. But it was hard to see. It was kind of disguised. But checking the data on like something didn't add up, that all of a sudden led to him having a really good year that year. That's really important. Justin Rose, before the Ryder Cup, Rose is a notorious tinkerer, like he's always messing with stuff. He was struggling with losing the ball right. So post the Charlie thing, in the back of my mind, I was like, well, I wonder what Rose's grip was when he was #1 player in the world. Because when he was #1 player in the world, he was very good in total driving, really very high up. His driver, he was kind of struggling with, his irons were good. So I asked Mark Bull, and Mark Bull is a 3D biomechanist from the UK. He's done a lot of Rosie's data captures over time. So we went back. Rosie had like a 20, I think it was about 24, 25 degree weaker grip in his lead hand prior to the Ryder Cup. This is post him winning Memphis. So he won Memphis, driving it better, but still wasn't quite right. He was at Shinnecock, and he calls me and he goes, my grip is, we've talked about my grip, he goes, but I think I'm going to make it stronger. I said, I think that's a good idea. He goes, well, I'm not really sure. I said, let me call Bully. So then I called Bully, and then basically it was a green light. And he goes, am I an idiot to go from winning to making my grip stronger the week before the Ryder Cup? And I go, well, not if you've done it before and it was pretty good. And then he drove the hell out of it, and he's been driving it really, really well, and he picked up a lot of distance. So again, using the data to drive a decision. Now that's a grip. I wish everything was that simple. But the essence of that is you're checking your work. You're going back and you're looking and something doesn't quite add up. I think that's really important. You owe the player that. I think that's doing your due diligence. So Technology gets bashed. I think it's really important because it allows you to identify what they do well, what are they doing, and you're capturing the data and it's subjective. This has no opinion, it's just the data is the data. And then when they're struggling, you have something, a frame of reference to go back to. But I'm always checking my work. I want their data, when I think it's good, to marry and match up with statistics and strokes gained being good. Because at the end of the day, if their strokes gained is rising and they're doing good things, they're generally playing better and scoring well. And obviously, regardless of the player level, that's the same thing. If you're a club golfer and you're doing something really good, I want you in, I want to capture some of the data, and a club golfer may just be video, just to see what they're doing. Might be 3D, might be something really simple, but we have a frame of reference to go back to. So that is checking your work. What you don't say, this is probably something I was absolutely horrific at when I started coaching. Because my sort of insecurities were, the more information I can give, it makes me look more competent, which is going to impress the player, which is going to make the player think that I'm a great coach and I'm going to be able to essentially have a relationship with this player. But that's not how it works. The best say very minimal things, but what they do say is really, really important. So I think a lot of times I identify lots of things that I think, oh, okay, I probably should say something. Technically, in the big picture, that might need to be adjusted, but a lot of times I don't say anything. In fact, sometimes I'll lie intentionally in the scenario to try and help a player. So I think it's really important that this skill is, we're in a world where everybody, especially these younger kids, they're ADD a little bit, they need stimulus all the time. And so I always tell players, if I'm not saying something, that's a good thing, because that means you're doing a lot of things right. I have no problem correcting you and telling you when you're doing something wrong, but don't think that me not saying anything is a bad thing. A lot of times players almost take that as a bit of security. Now, if something does go off, all of a sudden then you're going to interject, you may say something. Now, there are some players who need to be talked to while they're warming up, while they're doing something. If you don't say anything in the silence, it's not great. You need to come up with a strategy. Now, what you don't say doesn't mean you don't have interaction, but there's certain things that you don't say. So I think one of the things Butch Harmer does an amazing job of, and if you watch him, he keeps it very, very light with players. I think that's important. You've got to figure out your style, but I'm always trying to figure out what are the sort of talking points that players like, so that I can have conversations when I'm with them, so it stops me having to say something. And that sounds really weird, but if I'm having a conversation and we're talking about the kids, we're talking about what they had for dinner last night, we're talking about a sports event that happened, we're talking about something in the news, we're talking about the golf course, it's detracting from them being able to ask something that they might want to know technically. And everybody, I tell them, you're on a need-to-know basis. If I don't say something, you don't really need to know about it. So don't think that this means complete silence, but it means what you don't say is really, really important, because as soon as you've opened Pandora's box, that can be problematic. The devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. So if a player has an issue that they don't know about, ignorance is bliss, baby, right? Reassurance from a doctor, even if they just say, oh, you're fine, you might be dying, but you feel better because they've told you you're okay. The same thing. So what you don't say is really, really important. I think that's a skill that you have to, over time, you just have to hold your tongue. I want to say something, don't say something, don't say something. Because even though it might be right, as soon as you've opened it and put it out in the atmosphere, if you don't have a solution for it right then, there's a big problem. Especially elite players, they're able to do a lot of amazing things with just a little bit of information. So what you don't say, massively important. Stack the deck. This is probably one of the things that I think is extremely important in whichever player you play. Coach, you've got to try and figure out what's the best way to put things in their favour. So if someone's a horrific chipper and they're trying to play golf, they've probably looked at everybody on the internet, whether it's Short Game Chef or Joe Mayo or Lane Savoy and Rob Neal, whoever it is. They've looked at all of these short game people, and they're putting a lot of time and energy into trying to work on their short game, where you go, well, why don't you just putt it or use a hybrid and completely eliminate the skill that they're trying to develop, because the amount of time that they're spending on trying to do that is detracting from their ability to actually score. So players, you can't be good at every facet of the game. When you start to look at it statistically, maybe Tiger in 2000, but there's always holes in people's game. So you need to build your game around your strengths. So stacking the deck in your favour is, okay, how do I mitigate risk? Bogey avoidance is probably the closest thing to being a good scorer. That's where it's at now. Birdies are really important, but bogey avoidance. So how do we manage that? Around what you do your game, how do we develop a strategy that's in your favour? So that is stacking the deck. So for a lot of players, if you look at some of the things they try and do, if they're really good at lower pitch shots, let's say they're a fairly strong-faced player, the two examples I can think of is someone like Scotty Scheffler or Daniel Berger. They're both really good at lower checking shots. They don't hit that many high shots because that shot's more challenging based on their, if you like, technique. So they stack the deck in their favour by hitting more of those shots. They don't expose themselves to unnecessary risk by trying a shot that they know is going to somewhat expose them. So that's stacking the deck in your favour. Now, every golfer, you'll be able to ascertain, hey, what is the skill that you have? How do I go about basically stacking the deck in your favour? What are the things, regardless of the area of your game, that you're trying to do? Whether it's full swing, whether it's your short game, whether it's putting, whatever it is. But if you can mitigate those distances, that's really important. I have plenty of golfers, and there's an adage out there, that the closer you get the ball to the green, you're going to shoot better scores. Well, it's kind of is not accurate. From about 30 to 70 yards, maybe 65, is an absolutely horrific distance, especially on the PGA Tour, because green complexes and agronomy is such that it's so firm, and what's necessary to create the ball behaviour for spin and control is so challenging that if you put yourself in that, you're a complete bozo. I call them, you're putting yourself in the bozo distance. Like, it's ridiculous. Unless it's a back pin, when you put yourself in that yardage bucket, your chance of being successful is so high because the attributes necessary to put the ball behaviour required is so challenging. So again, if someone puts themselves in that situation, they are not stacking the deck in their favour. You just need to play away from it. So don't lay up to that shot. And I spend a lot of time with players, and then thankfully, Eduardo Molinari works with quite a lot of my guys, and you just show them the data. Well, here's the data statistically on what the best players are doing, and now the data goes, okay, well, I'm definitely not stacking the deck in my favour. So there's lots of instances of that, but I think it's really important. You're trying to, the name of the game is scoring. You're trying to make sure that you help people score way better. What is it going to take for that person to score better? And invariably, people are trying to do too much. Do a few things well, and you're okay. I use the analogy of Floyd Mayweather, a boxer, a lot with my players. Floyd Mayweather doesn't have a knockout punch, but he just outboxes and jabs people away. And I tell lots of golfers, just jab away. Invariably, you're going to win on points. So if you do the right things and you're very disciplined, and that's probably the most important part of scoring, you essentially can play really good golf. But people try and do too much, thinking they need to do a lot. It's not necessary to be a great player. So learn while losing. Well, I think every time I mess something up, that's an opportunity for me to learn. The success is all that does is probably breed complacency in my mind because you think you got it. But golf will kick you in the whatsits frequently, so that's not the case. But learn while losing is, okay, we've made an error, something bad has happened, what's the learning opportunity here? What's that a catalyst for? How can we look into that? What can we do better? We don't want to make the same mistake twice. What's the way to go around that? And I think my best examples are, I'll talk about Max Homa. So had a great run with Max Homa, and then in obviously 2024, he started chasing distance, which was a good idea until it wasn't. Okay, I was a little apprehensive, but I was all in once we started. Well, unfortunately, that he got very fascinated and fixated, is probably a better way, fixated on speed, and it started to change the DNA of his golf swing. And he's inherently someone who jumps to generate a lot of power. He's very strong and he can get a lot of speed. But it totally changes golf swing from being more of a, what I would call a flat cut pattern to more of a under push cut block flip anyway. So I basically wanted to change it, but he was going to make the playoffs because he played quite well at the Masters. and I think he finished third. And I knew that he would be a pick for the President's Cup after he was the glory boy in Rome, the Ryder Cup. So this is a what you don't say, hold your tongue moment. So I basically was band-aiding this. Well, long story short, after he missed the cut in Memphis, and I would argue one of the most stressful periods of coaching, because I'm trying to protect him. His caddy, Joe, who's been his caddy a long time, knows what I'm trying to do. But it's Max is obviously getting really frustrated because he's gone from playing really well to now he's struggling. And usually I'm pretty good at being the genie lamp and fixing things. But at this point, we kind of gotten so far down the road and he's so committed to like smashing it that there was this sort of conundrum. So long story short, he had finished his last round in Memphis, played terrible, and within 30 minutes I get a phone call, thanks for all your help, I'm going to go in another direction. And that's after like 4 years. So that kind of was a hit to the ego, blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, well, okay, well, what's the learning here? So immediately, within about 2 hours, I sent him a video of, okay, here's where you're at, here's what you need to do, here's what you should fix. This is where you've got off, here's what you've done when you were really good, this is where it's at, this is why where we're at. Blah, 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 blah. Very transparent, the whole thing. I'm like, I've got nothing to lose at this point. And I always try and leave relationships like you can go back to them. So anyway, well, Max and I didn't speak for however long. He went to work with a good friend of mine, John Scott Rattan, who I think is a great coach. And they tried some different things. I actually gave, the video I gave Max, I gave to John Scott. I said, I think this is what you need to do. They tried to do some other things, and lo and behold, post the Ryder Cup, I get a phone call. My wife and I are in Vegas for my 50th birthday, and it's Max calling me from Japan. Can I have a phone? I need a phone conversation with you. Long story short, Max asked to come back, no problem. But the learning I had while he was struggling, and the video I sent him, was basically what he's working on and doing now. It's the same information. So everything that I took, as soon as there was a big loss, I went immediately to, okay, what would I do differently? How would I do it? But I sent it right back to the player. I've done that quite a few times. But the reality is, you're trying to always find a solution to the problem, even if you're giving the information that someone else could be successful with it. And I think that's, learning while losing is every time you have a struggle, what is it that you can learn from? And how does that help you be a better coach? And how does that help the player? Because your ultimate responsibility is to the golfer. So I think learning while losing, every time you screw something up, there's a massive opportunity to do things slightly differently and do things the right way. And if you've got integrity and diligence, I think that's massively important as a coach, because that's what your reputation is built on. Illuminating the path is kind of, okay, showing the person, this is how you're going to do it. We're in this together. This is a journey, and we're a partnership. All my players, I'll tell them we're partners. Okay, so it's not dictatorship. It is like, this is a journey. We're going together. I'm guiding you. I'm going to show you, but here's the pathway. Because you cannot do the work for them. The best players want to do the work themselves. They're really, really keen on telling you what to do, telling you that, just give me the information. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. That's really, really important. So I think that understanding that you're showing them how to do it, that's illuminating the path, providing the guide, providing a plan for them, is massively important. Identifying the real problem, I think that goes back to essentially you use data, you figure out what's really going on, what is it? Now, this is what gets fascinating with players. A lot of times it can be something that's not even golf related. It can be emotional, it can be a domestic scenario. There's lots of different things, and in the world of like high performance and players, there's lots going on. If it's your juniors, there could be a lot of other things going on. And I think it becomes really important as a coach, you've got to get in the weeds a little bit, and this becomes you put a little bit of a shrink here. Figuring out, okay, is this just a technical issue, or is this something that the person is struggling with that's outside of golf, that's impacting their golf on there? And a lot of times that becomes really, really significant. And so your goal is to try and build that trust with the player, so that they can open up. The best players I coach are the most vulnerable, willing to be the most vulnerable. And that takes a lot to build that trust for them to put their cards on the table, When you see grown men crying because they're upset about things, their golf game, like, they trust you. And I think that's the really important. As a coach, you're trying to build an environment where you can identify what's really going on, and there's a lot of vulnerability by the player. The more vulnerable they're willing to be, the more they're willing to tell you, the better you can help them. And then that's where it comes back to being professional, trying to make sure that you provide for them that solution to things and know that you've got the resources to be able to help them. I think that's really, really important. So identifying the real problem isn't just golf related. Think outside the box. That's coaching. What are the mental, emotional baggage that somebody's bringing to you, because they all got it, is that, if you like, affecting what's happening as it relates to their golf. And I think as a coach, that's one of the things you've got to be very good at getting in people inside their headspace, trying to figure that out. Subjectively objective. So around players and golfers, there are lots of people who have an opinion that is potentially quite useful information, but it's their subjective view of something. Players are the worst person to talk to about a lot of things when it comes to the facts, because they're pretty subjective. Caddies, on the other hand, and wives are incredible, especially at the professional level, because they see things that affect them directly that are related to a player's golf. So it becomes really important to figure out what's their objectivity of this player, but it is a subjective perspective because it's affecting them. But when a player or a golfer, you know, took a high school golfer, they tell you what's going on, and then the high school coach who's observing and watching, or one of the teammates on the team watches what they do, is observing, I get two very interesting stories. I get quite conflicting stories. So the player is going to say one thing, and the coach and the peer group is going to probably say something a little bit different. So that's where subjectively objective is really, really important, is to get a lot of information. Goes back to when you're making decisions, but where do you get it from? And in every player and interaction you have, you're trying to figure out where's the best resources for me to get things to understand that player and that person, more importantly. Making inputs match outputs, I think that's all about what's the given outcome they want, what are we going to do it. Lots of players don't put in the work necessary to get the outcome they want. They walk in the door, they tell you that they've got these, I would say, very high goals, but their input to accomplish those goals is not proportional. As soon as that's the case, now you have this really interesting paradigm that you've got to navigate as the coach, because they can tell you the right things, but they're not going to put the work in. And the best players in the world are the hardest workers. The ones that are really good are maniacal about what they do. Like, they're not the best spouses to be around probably, and they're not the best parents, but you can't be the best at everything. But if you want to be one of the best players in the world, you're going to be very, very driven to do something. So understanding that and knowing what the elite of the elite and number one players in the world have done and what they do to get there, someone has to be realistic about, does what they're putting in equal what they want to get out? And that's when you have to have these hard coaching truth moments with people. And I've got lots of very wealthy people who fly their PJs into Birmingham and come and spend a day with me, and they want to do all these things. And then I'm like, well, what else do you do? And they travel around the world doing all these business deals, and they want to play golf all the time. And I'm like, well, when are you going to practice? I'll practice, you're just going to tell me what to do, and that's going to happen. Unfortunately, that's delusional. That's quite interesting, telling someone who's worth about 12 billion that they're delusional. But you've got to reframe it to them understand what you want to do isn't proportional to what you're willing to put into it. And so that becomes really, really important. But as a coach, that's vital, because otherwise you're not going to develop a successful plan. So relative to what someone's willing to put in, what's the expected outcome they should have? The hard part when you're at elite level is they're willing to almost do anything, sometimes to a fault, right? So there is balance, but I think it's really important what someone wants to do, their ability to, what they put into it's massive. Engineer engagement, I think that is, there is no doubt that social media has shown us that people want to be engaged, they want to be looking at things, they need interaction. I think as a coach, one of the things I spend a lot of time doing is texting people. They seem to love that now, especially the younger generation. or calling them because you're always checking in on them. You need to keep them engaged. Anytime there's silence with any of the students, it's not good. So whatever technology you use to communicate, I empower you that you should spend a lot of time doing that. It's quite exhausting, but you need to allocate. You have time for emails, you should allocate time for just reaching out to your students, especially the ones that are providing you the highest source of revenue. But the fact that you care about someone and you're engaging with them is a massive asset to you as a coach. So I spend a lot of time, my wife gets really frustrated, texting players and communicating with players and clients so that I'm staying connected so they know I'm thinking about them. And a lot of times I'll send something that, hey, I thought this might be good for you, or just things to keep them engaged. And I think that's really, really important. Anytime there's silence and there's no engagement, there's no interaction, that's really problematic. Because then it becomes very challenging when you're back with that student. But if there's always interaction and they know you're caring about them, that perception is very important to the person. They're going to be willing to be more vulnerable, they're going to open up to you, you're going to have a much better rapport with them and you'll be able to help them. Like, successful coaching relationships are driven on the interaction. They want to be around you. See, I know there's plenty of players on the tour that I will not do well with. Wrong personality, I'm fine with that. But I know the ones that are a good match for me, I'm going to nurture, really cultivate those relationships by engaging with them. And I think that's really important. I mean, it's not rocket science, we're in a people business, but I don't think it gets enough sort of, if you like, kudos to that. You need to really focus on that. It's vitally important. So to me, that's very underrated. And I think your empathy is massive. So when a player's struggling, I think you have to definitely wear the hat of, I totally get it, been there. I mean, you don't say I've been there because I've never been in the final round of a major, but wherever the level of player, you're trying to really put yourself in their shoes. And I think that's really important because, again, that builds that bond, but it allows you the ability to really understand kind of where they're at. And the more someone's honest and open with you, because you're providing empathy, the better you can help them. Most of the time, people are guarded. You're trying to break that barrier down. If they know that you're committed to them and you're going to help them, that's vitally important, and that empathy that you show towards them is massive. It's a good day, if it's a bad day, like, it's always about them. You've got to be present, it's them, but you've got to, they have to realize that you're empathizing with it. If they're struggling, I get it, man, it sucks, doesn't it? If it's good, man, you're so good. Like, sometimes you got to hug them, kiss them, make them feel good. Sometimes you got to cry with them a little bit, but it's really important that empathy is a massive skill because it breaks barriers and it allows them to open up to you. And that vulnerability I keep talking about is massive to really help somebody because they're going to expose what's really going on. It's going to allow you to help. And that's coaching, that's not teaching. That doesn't happen in a 60-minute lesson inside a sterile teaching environment. It can happen when you're on a golf course, when you're playing, you're talking. I think it's really, really important. And then activating the code. Taking all of this and really just, how do you apply it? And I think the great part about any information is you take the pieces that you think are helpful to you, where you might have a deficit, and then you go apply them. And the great thing about coaching is there's no one style. You might have a certain type of student that you teach. You've got to have a certain style of coaching that matches that. But I tell everyone, you've got to try and figure out what works best for you. There's no right way to do it, and that's the great thing about coaching. You've got to figure your style, embrace it, be happy, and know that not everyone's going to like it. That's fine, but there's plenty of golfers, there's plenty of people who need help. You just got to figure out who has an affinity for you and how can I go about doing that. And I think once people start to, you embrace who you are, what you're good at, stay away from what you're not good at, and try and expose yourself to the people that are going to gravitate towards you, you'll have a lot more success. I think that's the way that we can all get better as coaches. But coaching is, the great thing is taking different skills to help people, to help golfers play better. It isn't just, okay, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. There's so many different ways to do it. And the great thing now is we have so many different strategies with technology to be able to accomplish it. So hopefully gives you a bit of an insight into kind of what the coaching code is. It's an easy read. You guys will enjoy it. I hope everyone has a really great 2026. Hopefully it's a great year for all of us. Thanks very much, Lauren.
I apologize, we do have to change the room for our next